The first Christmas after the mine collapse was the one that broke my Lynn. For 3 days, a Montana blizzard had howled outside the cabin her husband, Chen, had built with his own hands. Now, the wind scream was a funeral dirge for the hope she'd clung to. Inside, her children were already fading. Bao, her 8-year-old son, was racked by a wet, rattling cough, and 5-year-old Li had stopped asking for food yesterday, a silence more terrifying than her cries. The company's charity had been a pittance, the neighbors' kindness exhausted by their own winter struggles. Mai Lin, a Chinese widow in a land that saw her as a ghost even when her husband was alive, was utterly alone. This morning, she'd boiled the last of the rice into a watery gruel, dividing it between the children while pretending she'd already eaten. The lie came too easily. It was time. "We're going into town," she announced, her voice a brittle whisper against the roaring wind. She dressed them in every layer they owned, threadbare coats and worn boots that were no match for the storm. The 2-mile walk to Fort Benton might as well have been 100. Opening the door, the blizzard attacked, a physical force of ice and fury. "Hold on to my coat," she screamed. "Don't let go." They stumbled into a world of white chaos. The cold was a predator, sinking its claws into their bones. 20 minutes in, Bao collapsed, a small, broken shape in the snow. "Mama," he whispered, his lips blue, so tired. Terror seized her. People who rested in blizzards never got up. As she struggled to haul him to his feet, Li screamed, pointing a trembling, mittened hand. A shape emerged from the swirling snow, a man on horseback. He was tall in the saddle, a lone rancher materializing from the storm. He swung down from his horse in one fluid motion. "What in God's name are you doing out here?" His voice was rough, deep. "Town," Mai Lin managed through chattering teeth. "You'll never make it," he stated, his gaze taking in the children's condition. "There's a line shack half a mile north. We can make it there." "No, I have to get to town." "Lady, whatever you need in town can wait." "Death can't." He didn't wait for an answer, lifting Bao onto his horse as if he weighed nothing, then placing Li behind him. "You'll have to walk, but stay in my tracks." "Why are you helping us?" she asked, bewildered. The stranger's face was grim. "Because if I don't, you'll die. And I've seen enough people die." He took the horse's reins and walked into the storm. Mai Lin followed, putting one foot in front of the other, focusing on the dark shape ahead until a small, snow-buried shack appeared. Inside, the sudden silence was a blessing. The space was tiny, but it had a stone fireplace. "Get them out of those wet clothes," the man ordered, already coaxing a flame from flint and steel. Mai Lin's hands shook as she stripped off the frozen layers, wrapping her shivering children in dry, musty blankets from a chest. "Now you," he said, not looking at her. She stripped off her own wet dress, wrapping herself in a blanket, her back turned to him. They huddled by the growing fire, alive but just barely. "All right," the stranger said, his dark eyes steady. "My name is Arthur Corrigan. Now, tell me why you were trying to kill yourself and your children in a Christmas blizzard." Mai Lin met his gaze. There was no judgment in it, only a weary patience. "I was going to give them away," she said, the words tasting like ash. "To the orphanage in town. My husband is dead. I have nothing left. They are starving. I thought, watching them live with strangers would be better than watching them die with me." Arthur was silent for a long moment. "I had a sister," he said quietly. "Died of fever when she was 6. We were too poor for a doctor. I swore if I ever had the chance to keep another family from breaking apart, I would." He stood and looked at her. "The storm is getting worse. We're stuck here for the night. Tomorrow, when it breaks, I'm riding to the Croft Ranch. The owner, Mrs. Croft, is always looking for workers. Kitchen, laundry, they house families." A fragile hope fluttered in Mai Lin's chest. "You think she would hire me?" "Mrs. Croft is tough, but she's fair. She values hard workers over anything else," he said. "It's another option. A better one than what you were walking toward. Trust me a little further, Mrs. Lin," My Lin. Trust me, my Lin, he repeated. Outside, the blizzard raged. But inside the tiny shelter, for the first time in months, my Lin felt a flicker of possibility. She gathered her children close, their breathing evening out in the warmth. Maybe this stranger wasn't just a man. Maybe, on this desperate Christmas, he was Mercy on horseback. The journey to the Croft Ranch took most of the next day. Arthur walked, breaking a trail through the deep snow while Bow and Lee rode his patient horse, Timber. The world was a vast, silent expanse of white under a painfully blue sky. As they walked, Arthur spoke to the children, answering Bow's serious questions about horses and making Lee giggle with a story about Timber saving him from a Wyoming blizzard years ago. He treated them not as burdens, but as people. Late in the afternoon, they crested a ridge. Below them lay a sprawling valley with barns, corrals, and a large house with smoke curling from its chimneys. Thornton Ranch, Arthur announced. It looked solid, permanent, everything her life was not. A woman was waiting on the porch of the main house. She was tall and severe, with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun. This was Agnes Croft. Arthur, she said, her sharp eyes moving from him to my Lin and the children. We were worried the storm had taken you. Who are these people? Mrs. Lin and her children, Bow and Lee, Arthur said. They were caught in the blizzard. She's looking for work. Mrs. Croft's gaze was assessing, missing nothing of their threadbare clothes and gaunt faces. What can you do? She asked my Lin directly. I can cook, clean, sew, laundry, my Lin said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'm a hard worker. I won't cause any trouble. You're a widow, Mrs. Croft stated, not asked. With 2 children. That's a complication. It's a motivation, my Lin countered, finding a spine she thought she'd lost. I have 2 children who need feeding. That makes me the hardest worker you'll ever find. A flicker of respect entered Mrs. Croft's eyes. I don't make a habit of taking in strays. But Arthur vouching for you means something. And I don't let people starve if I can help it, she made her decision. There's a small cabin behind the kitchen. 2 rooms. You'll work in the main house, 6 days a week. Room and board, plus $20 a month. Any laziness, any trouble, and you're out. Understood. My Lin was so overcome with relief she could only nod, tears blurring her vision. I need words, Mrs. Lin. Yes, she choked out. Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Croft said. Thank me in a month if you're still here. Arthur led them to the cabin. It was small and simple, but it had a wood stove, real glass windows, and 2 small beds for the children. To my Lin, it was a palace. That night, for the first time in months, they slept with full stomachs in warm beds. My Lin lay awake long after the children slept, thinking of the stranger who'd appeared from a blizzard and offered not just shelter, but a second chance. The work was relentless, but my Lin welcomed it. She scrubbed floors, baked bread, and washed mountains of laundry, grateful for the ache in her muscles. Slowly, the suspicion from the other workers turned to respect. Her children began to thrive. Color returned to their cheeks. Bao found a home in the stables, discovering a quiet gift with horses, while Lee became the darling of the ranch, her laughter a bright sound in the cold winter air. Arthur kept a respectful distance, but my Lin saw him watching. She saw him patiently showing Bao how to curry a horse and lifting Lee onto a gentle mare for a ride. One evening, he appeared at her cabin door. Just wanted to check on you, he said, holding his hat in his hands. Make sure Mrs. Croft is treating you fairly. She is, my Lin assured him. Thank you for everything. You don't need to thank me, he paused. Maybe this isn't my place, but helping you, it changed something for me. I've been drifting for years, never staying anywhere long. For the first time, I want to stay. The unspoken words hung in the air between them. An understanding that went deeper than gratitude. Would you stay for supper? She asked softly. He did. After the children were asleep, they sat on the small porch under a blaze of stars. They began to talk, sharing the broken pieces of their pasts. Arthur spoke of the war and losing his family, of the loneliness that had kept him moving for 15 years. My Lin spoke of Chen, of her love and her grief, and the guilt she felt for surviving. "Grief isn't clean," Arthur said, his voice gentle. "It's messy. You're allowed to be sad for what you lost and hopeful for what you might find. Both can be true." A few weeks later, a letter arrived. It was from Chen's aunt, Fen, a woman who had never approved of their marriage. The words were brutal, calling My Lin shameful for keeping company with another man so soon after her nephew's death. My Lin burned the letter, but the accusation stung. "Is she right?" she asked Arthur that night. "Am I moving too fast?" "You're not moving too fast," he said, taking her hands. "You're surviving. You're building a new life. That's not shameful, My Lin. It's brave." He looked into her eyes. "I'm not rushing you. But I want you to know, when you're ready, I'll be here." Spring arrived, melting the snow and turning the valley green. One evening, Arthur took her for a walk. By the creek, under a sunset-painted sky, he dropped to one knee. "I know it's not long," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "But I feel like I've known you my whole life. I love you, My Lin. I love your strength, and I love your children as if they were my own." He held out a simple gold band. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face. She thought of Chen, and the life they lost. But then she thought of the life she had now, of this good, steady man who had saved them in every way that mattered. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their wedding was a simple affair in the ranch's main room. The whole community gathered to witness it. Bao and Li stood beside them, their faces shining. As Arthur kissed her, My Lin felt a broken piece of her heart mend. It wasn't a perfect ending, but a hopeful, beautiful beginning. Their new life as a family was not without its challenges. One night, Bao woke screaming from a nightmare. "I forgot his face," he sobbed in My Lin's arms. "I forgot what Papa Chen looked like." Arthur entered the room, his expression full of empathy. He sat on the bed. "Love isn't a competition, son," he said gently. "You can love your first father and love me, too. Forgetting details doesn't mean you forget the love. The love is what stays." Then, in the heat of August, a woman from Arthur's past arrived. Her name was Isabel Monroe, and she was beautiful, confident, and introduced herself as Arthur's former fiancée. "He disappeared 5 years ago," Isabel explained to a stunned My Lin. "I've been looking for him ever since. Whatever you think you have, it's a mistake. He and I have history." The confrontation was tense. Arthur, his face grim, was unequivocal. "That was over a long time ago, Isabel. I'm married now. My life is here." "You don't love her," Isabel insisted. "You felt obligated to a desperate widow and her children." "I chose her," Arthur said, his voice firm as he looked at My Lin. "I chose this family. It's the best choice I've ever made." Isabel left, but her words lingered. That night, My Lin asked him, "Do you ever wish you'd married someone without complications? Someone whole instead of broken?" "We're both broken, My Lin," he said, holding her close. "That's what makes us work. We understand each other's scars. And those children are a blessing, not a complication. Being their father is an honor." A month later, My Lin discovered she was pregnant. When she told Arthur, his eyes filled with tears of joy. "Another member of the family," he whispered. When they told the children, Li shrieked with delight, and Bao grew thoughtful. "So the baby will share blood with all of us," he said. "Part of Mama and Papa Chen, and you, Paul." He had started calling Arthur Paul, a title that fit him perfectly. Their daughter, Anne, was born in the deep cold of February. She was tiny and perfect, a symbol of their new life. She was hope, made real. One warm afternoon the following May, nearly a year and a half after that fateful blizzard, My Lin stood watching her family. Arthur was patiently teaching Bow and Lee to rope, and was sleeping peacefully in his arms. The desperate, starving woman who had walked into a storm felt like a stranger from another life. "Tell us the story," Bow said that evening, as they sat by the fire. "Tell us how you and Mama met." And so they did. They told the story of a Christmas blizzard, of a mother's impossible choice, and of a lone rancher who chose compassion over convenience. They spoke of how a family was not forged by blood, but by love, courage, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Later, as they stood on the porch, Mai Lin leaned her head on Arthur's shoulder. "We made it," she whispered. "We did," he said, his arm tightening around her. "We saved each other." Love hadn't erased the past or fixed every broken piece. But it had built a home from the fragments. It had proven that second chances aren't just possible, sometimes they ride out of a blizzard on horseback, offering a hand when you're about to fall. And the greatest miracle wasn't the man who appeared from the storm, but the woman who found the courage to take his hand and build a new life in the warmth of the sun that followed.